Okay, we're going to record the presentation portion, and so we'll save questions for the end. We'll stop recording before the end, to keep it a safe space for everyone. Um, so, I don't know, Ashley, did you wanna,
I don't
or do you
have
want me to
the
just go for it?
introduction, but yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so I'm Erin Michael. I am a pelvic PT and breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in October of 2020 with hormone positive breast invasive ductal carcinoma. And I am on hormone therapy. I take tamoxifen right now. Um, and I underwent double mastectomy and reconstruction. Um, so, and then that whole experience is what pushed me to move into this specialty because we just aren't really taught enough about it. And by that, I mean, we're not really taught anything. So it's now my personal mission to educate as many women in the cancer community as I can about how cancer impacts our bodies and medical menopause and all of that. So, without further ado, um, I will pull up the presentation. Hi, Liz. Welcome. Um, Sharon, come on there. Okay. Um, so we are going to talk about all the fun stuff, pee, poop, sex, and our private parts. So buckle up, ladies. Um, this is this is always a fun topic to me. We're going to cover kind of a broad range of things, defining what the pelvic floor is, key roles of the pelvic floor, how treatment impacts the pelvic floor, maintaining or rebuilding your pelvic floor, coping with the favorite vaginal dryness or painful sex, the vaginal estrogen controversy that exists in the communities right now, and then lifestyle and supportive strategies for dealing with pelvic health. Oops, there we go. So, a little bit more about me. So, I have a practice where I concierge and virtual therapy. Um, I have a specialist certification in pelvic health and then also in menopause coaching. So these are my two areas of passion and interest right now. And so I spent the last few years doing some extra learning. This is my disclaimer that this is intended for education only. It's not a substitute for any medical advice, diagnosis, treatment. And, if you have, I don't know you personally, I haven't worked with you, so I can't make specific recommendations. But this is meant to be educational, so you feel empowered to talk to your providers. Keep hitting my arrow and it's not already. And then the other thing that I really want to ensure everyone is that this is a safe, open, and shame-free space. The thing with pelvic floor health is that there is no such thing as too much information. The more you tell us, the better, and we want to know. So, and then just as a reminder, we had somebody join after. We are recording this portion, the education portion, my presentation, but we're going to stop recording for questions so we can have privacy. Okay, so with that being said, um, and hold on one second because I left my pelvic floor model on the other counter. I did this the last time I presented too. I just left it in the other part of the room. Okay. Um, I can't see myself, so hold on. Okay, there we go. So the pelvic floor, which is this is going to get weird with the blur, but it's a group of muscles that are at the base of our pelvis. So from our pubic bone to our tailbone, and then across sit bone to sit bone. And they create kind of, some people will say a hammock. I like to say it's more like a trampoline because it's active. It's supposed to be springy. It is supposed to move up and down, contract and relax. Hammock just seems a little bit too lazy to me. Um, there's three layers. So the superficial layer is right around our vulva. And then there's the intermediate layer, and then ooh, camera. Oof, goodness. It doesn't like the deep layer. There's a deep layer. So it's like a bowl. But each layer has similar but different functions. I'm not going to go into the names of them or how they vary. Um, we don't. That's more than we need to know. Um, But the thing that we'll talk about today is that our pelvic floor has a direct impact on many functions in our body, including bowel, bladder, sexual function, and then our core and hip stability. So the core canister, um, we say this, so the pelvic floor and the diaphragm work together. And the diaphragm is the top of our core canister, and the pelvic floor is the bottom. And the walls of the core canister are our abdominals in the front and on the sides, and then our spinal muscles in the back. And as you breathe in and your diaphragm goes up and down, your pelvic floor should be moving in sync with it. So the thing to know about the pelvic floor is that it works on its own. It's not something, it's similar to our diaphragm in that we shouldn't really have to think about it or instruct it to do what it's supposed to do. It should do it somewhat automatically. And the problems we run into with dysfunction can be a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about that. Um, but this idea that we need to be purposeful with our pelvic floor is not necessarily true. It should work similar, it should work in sync and similarly to our diaphragm, just up and down, up and down. Um, One of the things to know if we've had any surgeries, and so obviously, if we've had surgeries in the pelvic region, that's going to impact our pelvic floor. But also, if we've had surgeries in our anywhere in this core canister, and even above, so ribs, our chests, even shoulders, once we start impacting how all the body parts move, we impact how the diaphragm moves, we impact our breathing coordination, and then we impact and then that impacts our pelvic floor. Um, so I noticed for me personally after my surgeries, my ribs were really bound down and stiff. And then my thoracic spine also. And so, and then realizing down the road that that was impacting how my pelvic floor was moving too. So I like to say that the pelvic floor has the core functions to help us remember what they are. So C for control. Oh, it keeps you continent. That's nice, Erin. It keeps you continent is what that should say. It allows us to control the release of urine, stool, gas, and prevent leaks. So it should allow us to control when we do and do not let those things out of our body. If we don't have great control over it, that's a definite sign, excuse me, of dysfunction. O for organ support. So it holds up the organs in our pelvic region. So as women, that's our bladder, our uterus, small intestines, rectum, our ovaries are in there. There's quite a few things in that small space. And then it helps by keep it holding them up and keeping them in proper position. If the pelvic floor is tight or loose, or we've got asymmetrical strength, um, it that can affect how things are laying in that area. If we've had a baby and things have moved around, if we've had surgeries, so that can play a role. R for reinforcement, so the core and hip stability, so it works in coordination with abs, diaphragm, hips, lower back, and provides support during movement. So our pelvic floor, when we are moving, our pelvic floor is helping us, or it should be. And then E for enjoyment. So our pelvic floor is essential for our sexual health and sexual satisfaction. It plays a role in our arousal, orgasms, and overall, yeah, sexual function. And one of the things I like to share is that the stronger your pelvic floor, the better your orgasms. So that's always another bit of motivation to work on our pelvic floor strength. So finding our floors for those of us who are in the room, if we want, we can. And those of you listening later, um, our floors are so if we're sitting here, it's typically easier to find our pelvic floors initially when we're laying down. But for the purpose of today, we can still figure this out sitting up if you're in a place to do that. Um, we can put a hand on our chest and then a hand on our stomach. And I just want everybody to take a nice deep breath in and feel where the air is going and then blow out. If you feel like there's more air going in your chest, then we want we want the air to go somewhat even in the belly and the chest, a little bit more in the belly. So if you tend to be a chest breather, one of the first things you can work on to improve pelvic floor function is becoming more of a belly breather. Because again, when we expand our belly, it changes the pressure and it changes the motion of our diaphragm. And then that helps us improve the mobility of our pelvic floor. As you breathe in and out, if you want to close your eyes, you can. And the thing with sitting is we can kind of feel like our vulva, they're touching they're making contact somewhat with our clothing. Maybe there's a little pressure from the seat. And as you breathe in and out, you may be able to feel the pulse of your external genitalia, your vulva going up and down and kind of making more contact and less contact and more contact and less contact. So just we can just quick do 5 big deep breaths and see if you can just feel what's happening down there. If you feel any movement at all, it's a subtle thing. I like to say it's not like flexing a bicep or making a big muscle. It's more like little butterfly wings. So it should feel like a little flutter. It's not a super strong contraction. It's not a giant movement. It's gentle. Our pelvic floors are gentle. Um, there's a lot more we can do to find pelvic floor. That was a very baseline introduction. And if you feel like you have no idea what your pelvic floor is doing, um, feel free to reach out to me to to spend a little more time on it. Um, I wanted to get into the impact of cancer treatment on the pelvic floor. So, um, cancer treatments, there's surgeries, chemotherapy, radiation. Um, and so what does that do and how does that create pelvic floor issues? So first and foremost, muscle tension and pain. So this is getting a cancer diagnosis is a traumatic thing. And we go through different variations of trauma, different stages of trauma. And that can lead to us feeling tense, doing some protective guarding, and then prolonged stress like that we can carry tension in our pelvic floor. So as women, if you like, I mean, right now my shoulders are up in my ears. Um, if you hold, if we hold shoulders up, or if you tend to be somebody who tenses your jaw when you're stressed, your pelvic floor is probably also tense and probably also tight. And then there's structural changes that are related to any surgeries that you've had, if especially in the abdomen or the pelvic region. Chemo and hormone therapies, uh, they reduce estrogen levels. Chemo affects the function of our ovaries, and we end up in a medical menopause. And for those of us on hormone therapy, we stay there. Or if we've had organs removed, if we've had ovaries removed, we stay there. We stay in that medical menopause. And the thing about medical menopause that we don't get any, our body doesn't get any preparation time. We get one day where, especially if we were younger, we're not like I was 37 when I was diagnosed. I was not, maybe I was in perimenopause at that point, but very early if I was. And then so I went from regular periods and like predictable cycles, and then all of a sudden just one night I wasn't, and the next morning I was in menopause, like hit the wall, right? And same thing will happen if we have organs removed. There's no time for our body to adapt. There's no gradual change in the hormone levels. It just happens. And then that can create more dramatic impacts on our structures and bodily functions. Um, and then when we lose our hormones, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we one of the things we'll see is the vaginal dryness. Our vaginas shrink. And this is true of regular menopause also, and the perimenopause transition. You can also experience vaginal dryness after pregnancy and giving birth when your hormones are still not have not regulated themselves. Um, so, because our vaginal tissue loves estrogen, it makes it nice and plump. And so when you take the estrogen away, things kind of start to, I hate to say this, but there's not really another way to say it, just like shrivel up a little bit and get thin. Um, and then the muscle weakness, our muscles, all of women, our muscles love estrogen also. So not just our pelvic floor, everywhere, all of our muscles. Bladder and bowel dysfunction. We'll see the hormone changes, um, and that pelvic surgery, chemo, any of that can disrupt nerves and then tissue function. And that can lead to the issues of urgency leakage, constipation, etc. Um, and that impacts pelvic floor. Um, and then sexual dysfunction. So again, cancer, the traumatic experience. We've gone through a lot of emotional trauma with our diagnosis. Most likely, we've seen our bodies change dramatically. We've got fatigue. We have new scars that we didn't have before. We're living with a fear of recurrence, or maybe we are living with a metastatic diagnosis. And so this can really disconnect us from our body and our whole sexual identity. And then I don't know why my arrow. There we go. So a little bit more about the hormonal shifts and kind of what's happening. So um, possibly there's a lot going on with menopause and making menopause more public experience, and just acknowledging that it really happens. And so there's a lot of these like coined phrases and things coming. So one of the things that's big right now is talking about GSM, which is the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. And so that as it's your like our genital system and our urinary system and what happens to them. And so some of the big signs of this are vaginal dryness, urinary urgency, or leakage. You can have one or both. Itching, and that's not just in our nether region. That can be also on any part of our body. Our vagina loves estrogen, but so does our skin. And so when we lose estrogen, our skin gets drier, and so it can make us itchy. And then there's a host of other really fun symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats and things, and then increased anxiety and depression. Also, there's a lot of estrogen has like hundreds of functions in our bodies, and so there's a lot of different systems that are impacted when we go into either medical or natural menopause. Um, and the primary driver here is the decrease in hormones, especially estrogen. And then that changes our vaginal and our urinary tissues, our urethra, the tube that we pee from. There's evidence that's showing us that that also shrinks in length, and it gets less flexible. And so that can also lead to leaking. We have a disadvantage from men. Men's urethras are longer, a lot longer. So there's a lot further distance before they have a leak. We have a pretty direct line to the outside and leaking. So, and then you make that path even shorter and we have more issues faster. Um, Low estrogen, as I said, our tissues, oh, I thought, okay, I froze for a second. Our tissues love estrogen. And so when we take it away, our tissues get um, they just lose their vibrancy and their elasticity. And then we also can see decreases in lubrication and desire. We can have more difficulty having orgasms. We can see like pain with sex. Um, and the real physical changes that happen with the vaginal tissue thinning and decreasing, and then muscles weakening. Common symptoms that we'll see, and this is with cancer, but with with menopause, medical or not or natural. So urinary, we may see leakage, increased urgency, increased frequency, waking multiple times at night to go to the bathroom. That was one of the things that was really hard for me when I started tamoxifen was I was waking up to pee 3 or 4 times a night. And that was super disruptive to my sleep, which I already was not great at. Um, Bowel, so constipation, leakage, or general difficulties with emptying. Also, bowel, like not being able to control when you release gas is a sign of dysfunction. Pelvic pain or pressure, so there's the discomfort, there's the dryness, the lack of lubrication, and then or we can see feelings of heaviness even during daily activities. Um, I find, I mean, personally, I mean, I'll share. I um, find now there's certain times of the month, I guess, with some of my hormone fluctuations where I can actually feel like the dryness and just like moving around. Like when I'm like, if I'm squatting or something, I can feel the difference in my tissue down there, which is something very new um, in the last couple of years. And then sexual health, so significant pain, dryness, loss of desire, decreased arousal, and impaired sensation. So kind of we've hit on that a little bit. Now that all sounds drab and dreary, and but it's not. There's there's hope for us. There really is. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So pelvic floor PT is a way for us to rebuild our pelvic function. There are various ways, there are various modalities and interventions and tools that we have as pelvic PTs to provide you with, teach you how to use to improve some of these symptoms, um, improve your sex life, improve the size of your vaginal tissue, um, and address any tightness that's happening. So there's a lot that we can do as professionals. Um, Breathing techniques. So this comes down to just some nervous system kind of down training and regulation. Um, Not only are we improving our coordination of breathing and trying to better pair the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, but we are also teaching our body to calm down. We're trying to get out of that heightened um, like fight or flight stage and get into the rest and digest and just really be in the moment with our body and give our pelvic floor and all our other systems a chance to relax. So there's actually one of the secrets here in the pelvic floor world is there's a lot you can do to improve pelvic floor function just by practicing breathing techniques. And then movement is medicine. So staying active helps us with our bladder, bowel, bone, pelvic function. You know, the idea that when there's dysfunction somewhere that we should stop moving is is going by the wayside. Um, it is the research is very much supporting that not moving makes things worse in the long run. And then the other thing about movement, we get better blood flow. We move tissues, and so we can loosen things up. So movement is great. And there's ways, if there are certain movements that agitate symptoms, there's ways that we can modify them and gradually work back up to being able to do the full movement that you want to do. Which, speaking of, so I'm going to show you some of my favorite movements to help with kind of improving range of motion. So child's pose is a great one. When you can, and now these positions, you can either do them statically, so just holding them, staying in one position for 1 to 2 minutes and just breathing while you're there. Or you can make them dynamic and you can kind of like child's pose, you can get hands and knees and just rock back into child's pose and then come back up on hands and knees. Um, the this one is good for loosening our hips. We can add reaching hands to the right or to the left to promote thoracic mobility and side bending. And my favorite thing to do in this position is just take some nice deep breaths at the bottom because that really forces us to expand into it, like gives you that feedback of feeling your belly kind of expand into your thighs. And then also, when you're in this position, it forces your posterior ribs to expand because you kind of you jam the front space, and so the air starts to move in the back. And so it allows us, and then laterally too, it allows us to move our ribs in a different way and get some more rib mobility, which improves diaphragm function, which then translates to better pelvic floor function. Happy baby. Um, this can be an awkward one to do in public, but in the in the comfort of your own home, or if you want to do it in public, I mean, have at you. I'd be proud of you. Um, but this one is a great one for opening the hips. Again, so our hips and our pelvic floor are very intimately connected. Muscles around our hip. I mean, the pelvis like your hip socket is the side of your pelvis. And so the pelvic floor is here and our hip is here. And so some of the rotators of our hip, our adductors, so the inner thigh muscles, they go right in and become and kind of merge with the pelvic floor. So if we have tight hips, we probably have a tight pelvic floor. So doing hip mobility and especially our rotations is really good for pelvic floor mobility. Um, so Happy Baby is a great one. Just trying, and this woman can reach her feet and pull down, but some of us can't do that. So it's okay if we grab our lower legs or if we grab the back of our thighs, pull. And the idea is to get those knees down as low on your sides as you can. And same idea, you can do this one statically and just hold the position and breathe. Or I like to get some like thoracic and rib mobilization, rock side to side a little bit. Um, and then pigeon pose is another one of my favorites. one of the muscles that commonly is tight or weak is called our piriformis, and it's one of our rotator muscles in our hip. Pigeon pose is a great way to open and stretch that muscle. And same thing, we can hold this position statically, or you can kind of rock in and out of it. You can lean your trunk in different directions to get more of a stretch at different areas. So it's another great position. Um, and then improving shoulder and thoracic mobility, because again, that impacts how our diaphragm moves and how our core functions, and then how our pelvic floor moves. So another one I love, threading the needle. And so same thing with all with this one, it can be you can stay, you can hold it there, or you can go in and out of it. But with this one, I also like to do a nice big breath when I'm down, when my needle is threaded, and it allows me to fill my lungs on that top side. So where um, the ribs that are up, she's breathing, oops, sorry, she's breathing into those. And so that's a great way to get some of that lateral rib mobility that we need and promote that. Um, and then if you have a foam roller at home, or at your gym, or wherever, um, it's nice to do some back bends and really open up your thoracic spine over the foam roller. You can roll up and down. You can, if you can get your hands behind your head, holding them there and even arching over the foam roller at different positions. Again, that really opens up our ribs, and that and allows our thoracic spine to extend. And you can kind of go segment by segment and find where you're tighter and focus there. And then open books are a similar, you start, so where she is, hands together, you're on your side in the fetal position, and then you reach that top arm back behind you straight and turn your head too. So we're opening up the book, and then we're closing the book. And so this is a great one for trunk rotation. And same thing, I like to, when my book is open and my hand is behind me and my head is turned, that's, I like to take a deep breath there. Same idea, just getting our ribs to move a different way. Um, some things to know if we're having issues with dryness or painful sex. Um, Moisture matters. So we're losing some of that natural moisture. So finding ways to bring it back. And there's moisturizers and there are lubricants, and they're two different things. So our moisturizer is, we use that regularly, depending on what type of moisturizer you're using. Um, like I use a hyaluronic acid suppository, and that I do twice a week. Um, but there's some moisturizers you could use them every day, just like you would to put lotion on your skin. And then lubricants are what we use during sexual activity or any type of penetration, like when we go to the gyno. And that's to just, and we're trying to keep things, yeah, lubricated so that we prevent any damage to the tissues. It decreases friction, so then that decreases pain. It allows things to glide easier, and then we're supporting healthy tissue over time. Um, Another way that we can cope is reimagining what intimacy means to us. So it's important, um, with a partner, that we have good communication, um, talking through trying new positions. Maybe we're taking it back to the basics and we're starting with non-sexual touch, like let's cuddle on the couch, let's hold hands, and just the self-exploration, find out what feels good to you so that you can explain that to a partner. Um, there's non-penetrative options. So clitoral stimulation, and then, but the my and the big thing here is being able to communicate and be open about exploring and trying different things, and whether that's with yourself or with your partner. And then pelvic floor PT, which we talked about. Pelvic floor PT can help not just with bowel or bladder incontinence, but also with painful sex. We have a lot of strategies that we can provide and help with problem solving, ways to make it a far better experience. And then um, the big one here, the vaginal estrogen controversy. So systemic versus local. So systemic means that the hormone is going throughout our entire body. And then versus local, where it's being applied directly to a specific area. When we're using vaginal estrogen, that's considered a local therapy. If we were taking hormones or if we were wearing a patch, or that would be systemic. Research, there's some very high quality evidence that's been coming out recently, that generally it stays localized. They do not see any increase in systemic estrogen levels when women use vaginal estrogen. Um, the data, because of how the medications work, the data to this date has been a little bit less clear for breast cancer survivors who are using AIs. Um, but it generally still is leaning in the direction of it being safe. Um, And there's also evidence to show us that it's leading to an improvement in lifespan because of preventing UTIs. So when our tissue gets dry, like our pH balance changes, we become more susceptible to infections. And so the number of UTIs and the recurrence of UTIs goes way up. And then UTIs can become septic, and so you can have some pretty poor outcomes with recurring UTIs. So that's I personally use it. And I've tried like I go back and forth. I use my vaginal estrogen a couple times a week, and I use my hyaluronic acid suppository a couple times a week. And I also use it, so I use it internally, but I also use it externally to help my clitoral and my vulvar tissues because they also get dry. And truly, I mean, though for me, though the hyaluronic acid has helped, the vaginal estrogen is way more effective than anything else that I've tried so far. And it was a share, like mine was, I talked to my oncologist, I talked to my gynecologist, and we all came to an agreement that it was safe for me to use. It is a very individual decision, and it's something to definitely like talk with your medical team about, weigh the options. And if it's truly not for you, that's okay. I'm not here to pressure anyone into using something that they're not comfortable with. But I do want to just share that research is showing us more and more that it's safe. Um, if we've had, especially for those of us who have had hormonal cancers, whether that's a gyn or a breast cancer. And then um, but for non-hormonal options for people, um, there's I was using Bonafide for a number of years. I like their suppositories. They are a little bit more on the expensive side though. Um, and then Good Clean Love has a lot of different products. So they have moisturizers and lubricants, and they have kind of a whole collection of cleansers. Like they have a really neat product line. And then a new one to the market that I just started using, which is similar. I find it functions very similarly to the Bonafide one, but it's a little bit less expensive. Is Playground. They make lubricants, and they just released these Miracle Melts, and so I've been using those for the last few weeks. And I'm seeing this kind of the same impact as I did with Bonafide. So. And then the last thing that I always love to share is that there is research behind vibrator use and its benefits for our pelvic floor strength and even vaginal tissues. So it improves blood flow and lubrication to those tissues. It supports the kind of the nervous system, the reconnection. So if we're having trouble having getting to a place of orgasm, vibrator use can help us reconnect our brain and our body parts. Um, a good orgasm helps us with muscle relaxation. Um, and then it can improve comfort with penetration over time. Because again, we're like making those tissues healthier. It's actually supported in clinical guidelines. And there's research showing us that basically like 20 minutes, I will write you a script for 20 minutes a week of vibrator use. So just a few minutes a day, like a few times a week can make a lot of improvement. So that's always a fun one for me to share. Um, Everyday tips for our pelvic health and well-being. So staying active, like I said, movement is medicine. Reducing activity level can actually increase our symptoms over time, whatever they are. Proper posture. So when we're standing, when we're sitting, um, our ribs being stacked directly over our pelvis, and then and if we're standing, our shoulders, our hips, our ankles, all in line with each other, um, is really important. The If we really hyperextend, like kind of stick our chest out, that creates imbalances and that can lead to more pelvic floor dysfunction. Um, and like if we're experiencing leakage, that can be a reason that we experience more liquid leakage if we're not stacked well. Hydration, so water and fiber intake, really important. Um, if we are straining to poop, that causes a lot of stress to the pelvic floor. Um, God, I have a lot of typos in here. Beware of triggering beverages or foods. So unfortunately, sad Sally, alcohol and caffeine are triggers. So if you are having, or spicy foods can be triggers. So if you're having issues, especially urinary leakage, caffeine, alcohol, spicy food, they can all make the leakage worse. One thing that I like to suggest to people is if you are struggling with leakage, keep a diary um, of what you ate when you went to the bathroom, if you had any leakage, if you had urgency, and then you can start to see some patterns. So, oh, every time I drank green tea, I leaked a little bit. And then or like if I love Celsius. If I have a Celsius after X hour of the day, I won't make it through the night. Like so things keeping a diary is really, really helpful. It helps us recognize patterns that we may not notice otherwise. The mind body connection, so being present with your body, I talked about that a little bit, but just the getting into being able to get into that rest and digest state. So whether that's mindfulness practice, meditation, journaling, yoga, whatever you can do to kind of get yourself in the moment and connected with yourself. Avoiding strain. So not straining to pee or poop. Like, so just not forcing it out. Um, One little life hack, if you don't have a potty stool, so like a squatty potty or a variation thereof, I highly recommend getting one. It's life changing. I mean, it just makes pooping so much and peeing. It just puts your body in a better position to open you up and let those things just flow. And then lifting with the proper technique, so not really bearing down and pushing our belly out when we're lifting something. Working on getting a good, nice core brace when we're lifting. And then support groups. So, I mean, we have each like so we have each other. We can meet with RAB sometimes, but any like finding other communities where people have had similar experiences can provide the emotional support that maybe we can't get at home or with friends, etc. And so that just having different support can help us too. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to kind of leave the like we're all different. So all of our journeys are unique. It's okay to take things. We covered a lot today, and quickly. Um, it's okay to take things one step at a time, to find one thing to focus on. Um, and then I wanted to leave with the positive message because some of this sounds so drab. But healing and improving our strength and all, like it's all possible. It really is. I mean, I got into this specialty for that reason, because we really can, there are really ways we can improve. And so every small step, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. So, um, I want everyone to feel empowered in that way today after this presentation. So yeah, any little step matters and is important. So if you don't feel like you can do it all, that's okay. And that's like a general life thing, right? Um, but for our pelvic floor too, it's okay if you can't do it all. If you pick one thing and do that well, it's going to make a big difference for you. So, and then, oh, whoops, brr. And then this is just me. So about my business, my website, my Instagram. And then if you go to my website, you can get, I send out, it's going to start being bi-weekly, so twice a month, just free newsletter, just free information for how to improve pelvic floor and overall like menopausal health. So yeah, that's that.